And joining us now to discuss the latest Fed rate decision is Thomas Hayes. He's founder, chairman, and managing member of Great Hill Capital. Welcome back to the show, Thomas. First off, I'd like to get your reaction to the decision. It was expected, but is the Fed getting it right?
I don't think they are. I think Powell has unintentionally put himself in the position of being a lame duck for the remainder of his term. I think you're going to see President Trump start to allude to the next Fed chair, which will create a shadow Fed situation, which is going to be a dovish Fed moving forward. And I think President Trump made a couple important points today. Number one is Powell is about 200 basis points too restrictive, meaning the Fed funds rate is about 200 basis points more than inflation. And that's going to catch up. And the concept of too late Powell, whether you love it or don't love it, President Trump has been right every single time. And I think this situation is going to be the case this time. That's the bad news. The good news is Powell was slightly more dovish. It originally looked as if the meeting was hawkish, but he did adjust language from the firming language to the adjustments language. And I would say one last thing, Diego, is that the Fed is supposed to be data dependent. And the whole meeting was about him predicting that inflation was going to go up because of tariffs, even though that simply was not the case in 2018. And I think President Trump has made the point in past appearances where he said, listen, why don't you just cut? And if you're right about inflation, you can always raise rates. He could always do a 25 or 50 point raise if inflation ticks up from tariffs. But if he's wrong, he's certainly going to be too late. And that is a risk to the economy. And somewhat reflected in the projections, they're still projecting 2 cuts towards the end of the year. If they're so sure about that, why don't they just go ahead with it?
Yeah, there was a lot of caution about the effect of tariffs during Powell's speech today and while he fielded journalists' questions. But GDP numbers have not been showing signs of tariffs' impact so far. We also got some better data about dropping, sharply earlier this week. How trade uncertainty is shaping consumer spending right now?
Yeah, look, we saw consumer confidence was okay. The GDP now numbers look strong. We will not have 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. So all of that is constructive. But at the same time, you have 72 million millennials, the largest segment of our population now, who have had to delay their lives because of Jerome Powell. They cannot afford houses because mortgage rates are too high. And that's going to have knock-on effects for many generations to come if they don't move quickly. Again, the Fed is appointed to be data dependent. He is predicting, and he continued to predict, that inflation is going to go up. And he may be right, but if he's right, he can adjust. It's much easier to bring down inflation through rate cuts than to ward off deflation if you get it wrong and you're too late, because the cost of bringing the economy out of recession and the societal cost of unemployment is far too great, particularly when you have debt to GDP of 120%, and we're paying $600 billion more per year in interest than we need to be doing given the rate of inflation and given the rate of employment at the moment.
Yes, Thomas, but during his speaking this afternoon, Powell spoke about, when he addressed the real estate market, about first the rates and second about housing supply. And new home construction here in the U.S. fell in May to a 5-year low, with economists saying the housing sector is struggling to add overall economic growth this year. How do you look at that? Because that's a longer term thing.
This is the unintended consequence of wrong-minded decisions by the Fed. Who's going to build a house when rates are 7.25 and risk capital and hope that it sells? I'm telling you, if rates come down below 30-year fix comes below 6%, in other words, if the Fed funds rate was at a reasonable level, the demand for housing would be unlimited. And you couple that with the current administration looking to deregulate. They're going to open 500-something something thousand acres of federal land, by the way, most of which in metropolitan areas where there's demand for starter home construction. The only thing that's missing right now, the only one that's delaying everything, is our predictor-in-chief, Jay Powell, who is predicting what he thinks might happen to inflation. If he's so certain about his predictions, why doesn't he look at his real GDP expectations, which he cut down to 1.4% real GDP for 2025? If he believes in his predictions so much that he thinks real GDP is going to be 1.4%, he should have done 50 basis points today. So right now, it looks like he's getting away with it. Everything's good. GDP's okay. Earnings are okay. Employment looks okay. Mixed data on that front. But once it starts to turn the other way, it turns hard, and he has the runway right now to take action. He didn't take advantage of today. My sense is maybe he'll get 2 more months to get through it. He'll announce something at Jackson Hole or set the table for the next cut in September, and he'll probably squeak through and thread the needle okay. A few months too late, but he'll squeak through, and it will be okay. But there would have been no downside of doing it today other than saving taxpayers 3 months of excessive interest on our Treasury.
We'll certainly speak again then. In the meantime, thank you, Thomas Hayes. Great having you.
Thank you, Diego.
Much more